Hearing anymore? We're live. That's okay. You can square if you want. I don't care.
So you're gonna be taking my video off now?
Only if you want to. I can. Otherwise, you can do it from where you are. It's up to you.
I'll do myself here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, when you started, you just let me know when. Okay.
Yep. Well, we're live on Facebook now. G'day, Facebook. How you doing? Alrighty.
Bonjour, everyone.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think it is just ticking over 7 o'clock where I am. So I think that's about time to get started. I'm just going to check that we're live and everywhere that we need to be. Yeah, looking good. We'll just wait for Marc to come back, wherever he's gone. A good g'day to everyone who is in the room here on the Zoom, and to everyone who is starting to tune in on Facebook as well. Good to see you there. We will kick off in a matter of seconds. I just finalize a couple of admin things. Alrighty. Locked and loaded, ready to go, Marc?
Marc, ready?
Ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready.
Beautiful. Alrighty, well, g'day everyone, and welcome to our very, very special virtual tasting with Darroze Armagnacs, all the way from Darroze, from Armagnac in France. Quick g'day to everyone who's in on the Zoom chat, Marco, Murray, Paul, Raf, Thomas, Valerie, Ali, everyone who's here, as well as Paul Leyland, who's jumping in on the Facebook there. Good to see you. If you're not familiar, my name is Scott Fitzsimons, and I am the whiskey and spirits manager here at the Oak Barrel Bottle Store. And this is something that I'm quite excited about. We are big fans of Armagnac here at the Oak Barrel, and we actually sell more Armagnac than any brandy. That's including cognac and that sort of thing. So we have a big love for the spirit here. But one thing that I found in the past 5 years in this role is there's not always a great understanding on the differences between Armagnac and cognac, and the difference between French brandies and international brandies, and just all those little intricacies. Partly because it's very rare to have someone from the industry actually out in Australia to talk us through it and to explain all these things for us. So one of the great things that we had happen about 4 years ago was to have Marc Darroze from the Darroze family out here. And I know it was exactly 4 years ago, almost to the dot, because I have the board that he signed at the Oak Barrel back in the day. And for the people who aren't familiar with the Oak Barrel, when we get special guests to run a tasting at the back, we get them to sign a board afterwards. And that was actually on June the 3rd, 2016, that was. So we was actually going to have Marc back into the country last week, and it was all going to be very, circle of life and great. But unfortunately, and probably summed up in what Marc wrote on the board back then, life is very short, drink Armagnac. I think that's very true in 2020 more than any other. So what we've done today is we sort of liaised with Mauro and the team at Tobacco and Marc directly on 5 Armagnacs that were in Australia that Marc thought would really show not only the Darroze house, but also Armagnac in general. So for those who are playing along with us, we've sent you out 5 samples of Armagnac, all in little packages there. Now, a couple of things I do want to say quickly. We've sent you out 30 mils of each one. If we were in the back room here at the Oak Barrel Tasting Room, we would have only done 15 mils. So there's actually quite a lot of Armagnac there. So you can taste them all, save some for tomorrow or another day. The other thing I will say, that if yours is one of the ones that has pink wax on the top, I would probably get a knife and open them now rather than doing it 4 or 5 Armagnacs in, because we want you to keep all your fingers by the end of the day. The way tonight's going to work is obviously we've got some very special guests from France tuning in. What we're going to do is go through a bit of a introduction about the spirits, then talk about the company, and then get into the tasting. So feel free to nose Armagnacs as you go along and ask questions, whether it's on the Facebook or on the Zoom or even on the YouTube at oakbarrel.com.au/live. And this is one that, get comfortable, sit down, and really just soak in what we're about to hear, because not only is Marc an expert in Darroze, in the family company that his father set up, but he's also played a large part in the shaping of the Armagnac industry that we see today and the sort of Armagnacs that we see all around the world. So to both Marc and to Olivier, who works very closely alongside, thank you very much for coming back to the Oak Barrel, albeit via virtually, but it's a pleasure to have you back.
Okay, Scott, thank you. Actually, I was supposed to be in Australia. We had programmed a trip in June, so unfortunately, with the situation, it was not possible to come. But I hope that next year, maybe before, we will be able to travel and to visit you. Of course, that's a pleasure for me to be with you again. I thank you. Armagnac is a niche market, is a niche category, so that's always very, very useful, important for us to have the opportunity to present the category and also to present our company. So thanks again. So what I propose is we're going to have a full presentation of spirit in general, but I know that you have an audience very knowledgeable, but maybe I repeat some information that you already know. After that, we're going to make a kind of comparison between Cognac and Armagnac, the two main big brandies in France. And of course, we're going to have a very long focus on the category and on the presentation of our company and our philosophy. During the presentation or at the end of the presentation, it's up to you. We're going to test 4 different Armagnacs, 1 blended Armagnac, 12 years old, and 4 Armagnacs coming from different terroirs, different soil, different farms, and with different vintage on each bottle. So of course, if you have any question, if my English is not good enough, and if you want me to repeat something, so do not hesitate to ask. To stop the presentation, and I will try to do my best to that you understand everything. Olivier, we can start.
I'm sure your English is better than my French, so we should be okay.
Thank you, Scott. So we're going to start with the spirit category. So as you know, the spirit is an alcoholic drink that we obtain with a distillation. And there is 2 main categories in spirit. The first one is what we call the simple spirit, directly obtained with the distillation. So that's all the brandies, the whiskeys, the rums, the tequilas, the gin, the vodkas. Distill the fermented liquid with grain, grapes, canes, all different materials, and it's a direct distillation. And after that, there is another category that we call the compound spirits, and it's obtained by blending an eau de vie, a simple spirit, with different vegetal substances, and that's what we call anisette, liqueurs, and everything. In the simple spirit, of course, there is different categories, and we're going to speak today about only the brandies, and we won't speak about any the other categories that you know maybe better than me. So the brandy means a burnt wine. It means that a brandy is always a spirit made with wine. And it's an English name that we coming from a Dutch. The original name is a Dutch name, and again it means burnt wine. In France, there is two very precise area to produce brandy, cognac and Armagnac, and of course in these two categories we must follow specific production conditions. We also find some brandies in many countries in the world without any appellation, without any strict conditions of production in Brazil, in France, in Spain, in the US, everywhere. To give you an idea, the volume of sales of brandy without any appellation represent a little bit less than 5 times the sales of the market of brandy is very big compared to cognac. So just a few words about the comparison between cognac versus Armagnac. So as you can see, we are located southwest of France. Cognac is north of Bordeaux, where Armagnac is south of Bordeaux, between Bordeaux and Spain. Armagnac is made with a continuous single distillation with a column still. We mainly use 3 grapes to produce an Armagnac, and of course, each grape variety we propose a different character to the spirit. The surface of vineyards to produce Armagnac will be around 2,000 hectares, and there is 150 negotiant traders for a little bit more than 700 producers. So this is a little bit old, but it's almost the same today. We sell every year 4.5 millions of bottles, from 3-5 millions of bottles, 35% on the export markets, 35% on the domestic market, and also 30% of the production of Armagnac is used to cook. And also to make the classic Floc de Gascogne, which is a blend of Armagnac and juice, grape juice before the fermentation from Armagnac. To give you an idea, 15 brands represent 80% of sales, and the top 5 only less than 50% of the sales. You will see the difference with cognac. Cognac. This is not a column distillation, it's a classic pot still with a double distillation. Almost a unique grape variety, Uni Blanc. Much bigger than Armagnac, with 75,000 hectares of vineyards, 250 traders, and 4,500 producers. In the same year, in 2016, 180 million bottles of cognac has been sold in the world, and mainly oriented on the export markets. 98% of the sales are for the export markets. 4 big brands represent almost 90% of the sales. So it's the sales are very concentrated in 4 main brands, where the leader is NC with 55% of the sales. So when we compare Armagnac and cognac, we can say that cognac is really oriented on big names, big brand, and these brands are also how can I say, a part of big luxury groups. For example, NC is a part of LVMH, so Moët & Chandon, all these luxury brands, where in Armagnac we are more family oriented, like myself, maybe smaller companies, and maybe more independent and family oriented. So now we're going to focus on Armagnac. First, Armagnac is the oldest French eau de vie. We have found some traces of distillation in 1310. And of course, at this time, the spirits were used as a medicinal production, medicinal consumption. But we know that we distilled some wine in 1310 in Gascony. Armagnac is the combination of different influences. The first one is the Romans. The Romans brought the vineyard in Gascony, in Armagnac. The Arabs brought the distillation. The first stills came from Morocco and Algeria. And the sales also helps us to understand that the barrel could propose something more complex and more interesting. So all these cultures together really built what we know today. It's a combination of vineyard, distillation, and aging conditions. A very, very important period in Armagnac was the 17th century. As you may know, in Bordeaux, there is a lot of vineyard, of course, to produce wine. And we use a lot the river in Southwest to transport the wine. And when the wines from outside Bordeaux arrived in Bordeaux, it was blocked by the producer of Bordeaux to avoid the competition and to avoid this. How can I say it? When people stop the vessels in Bordeaux, we have developed the distillation. So it was not really a competition between wine and spirits. So it was easier for us to use the Garonne River, and we mainly ship our wines, distilled wine in Dutchland, in Amsterdam, because the two main cities in Europe at this time were London and Amsterdam. So this is really when we started to accelerate a little bit the distillation in Armagnac till the crisis of phylloxera. As you know, this little virus in the soil has destroyed all the vineyards in Europe, and of course in Armagnac we have lost about 75% of our vineyard from 1880 till 1910. After the phylloxera, this is really when we have decided to replant the vineyard and to try to produce something very fine and something very elegant in Armagnac. So we have created the rules of condition to protect the name Armagnac, and also to be sure that we will follow a list of rules to be sure that we will be able to be very consistent in quality and to really propose something unique and different. This is when we have created the appellation Armagnac, and all the list of the conditions to produce an Armagnac that we have created in 1936 are still used today. So it was the occasion to really create a territory to also list the grape varieties allowed to plant in Armagnac. All the conditions of production have been listed in 1936 and are still very useful today. The countryside where we are living is also a territory that we call Gascony. In Gascony, we are an hour from Bordeaux by car. We are an hour and a half from the Pyrenees, the mountain. We are an hour and a half from the Atlantic Ocean. So that's a very, very unique countryside where it's very, very nice to live because we are in the countryside. But we are very, very close to the main cities and the ocean and the mountains. In this area is known for the diversity of the activity. There is a strong polyculture. The farmers are not only focused in one activity; they are always produce different activities, and the gastronomy is also very important. So you can find very, very good food, nice ducks for the foie gras, of course, but also very, very nice and tasty chicken. So Gascony is very, very known for the quality of life and for the gastronomy. Also, we like to spend a lot of time with friends around the table with a good meal. That's really a part of France very known, yes, for the art de vivre and the very, very nice way of life. Also, there is a very, very interesting forest in Gascony, oak forest, and it's interesting because we use our local oak to make our barrels. So in the same territory, we are able to found vineyards to produce Armagnac and trees, oak trees, to use and to make some barrels to age Armagnac for decades. So the vineyards, there is 3 main parts in Armagnac, and depending where you are producing your Armagnac, you can use different names. The most interesting is the Bas Armagnac. So this is on the west part of the territory. Bas Armagnac is known for a special terroir, and Bas Armagnac, this is also where today we produce a lot of the biggest volume because of the quality. In the other part, in the other side, we have Haute Armagnac, or in France mean high in altitude, where Bas mean low in altitude. In Haute Armagnac, you will also find a lot of vineyards, much more oriented on the production of table wine to drink. There is less distillation in Haute Armagnac, and the vineyards are mainly used to make some wine to drink. Classic, fresh, and acidic white wine. Between Haut and Bas, there is another part that we call Armagnac Ténarèse, which represent about 20% of the distillation. In this area, the soils are completely different, and the style of the spirit that we will produce in Ténarèse will be also very different. Of course, if you decide to blend an Armagnac produced in Bas Armagnac and an Armagnac produced in Armagnac Ténarèse, you lose the right to put on the label Bas Armagnac on Ténarèse, but you use the classic name Armagnac because, of course, all these 3 parts represent what we call Armagnac and the big territory of Armagnac. So this is a classic landscape with a lot of hills, a lot of different. The vineyards, we could produce Armagnac in 5,000 hectares. That's the size of the vineyard where we respect all the rules that we must follow to produce an Armagnac. Because of the lack of demand today, we only use 2,000 hectares on the 5,000 hectares. So if you want to drink more Armagnac in Australia, we can produce more than what we do today. That's a good news. As I explained, Bas Armagnac, that's where we have more sandy soils. The Armagnac that we produce in this part of the countryside are very delicate and fruity, with a long potential of maturation. Usually, the base Armagnac are used for the very, very old Armagnacs that we keep for decades. And today, it represents about 70%, a little bit less than 70% of the total surfaces that we use to distill. Ténarèze, this is more clay, limestone, and silicious, and it's producing some more powerful and full body Armagnacs. Today, it's about 30% of the vineyard. So it means that Haute Armagnac is less than 10%. The grape varieties that we are using, Uni Blanc. So I don't know if you remember, but Uni Blanc, this is the grape of Cognac. 98% of the vineyards in Cognac are planted with Uni Blanc. This is a perfect grape for distillation. It's producing for some very fine, very, very elegant spirit. And also Uni Blanc is interesting because the evolution during the distillation is very fast. So it's very interesting to use Uni Blanc for the young Armagnacs. Today, Uni Blanc represents about 50% of the distillation. The second grape I present is Folle Blanche. So Folle Blanche is really the historical grape variety in Armagnac. Before the phylloxera, almost all the vineyards in Armagnac were planted with Folle Blanche. The problem with Folle Blanche, it's a very fragile grape, very, very sensitive to botrytis. But in good condition, it's a very, very, very powerful and elegant spirit that we produce with Folle Blanche. We plant more and more Folle Blanche today because again, it's a good way to produce something very different to the big brother of Cognac, and to really propose a strong character to our distillation and our spirit. Number 3, this is one of my favorites. This is the Baco grape. So this is an hybrid that created after the phylloxera. It's an hybrid of the Folle Blanche, so the historical grape, and the US grape that we call the white Noah. It's a very, very strong grape variety, not very sensitive with all the problems that we can find in a vineyard during the summertime. It's very, very interesting in the sandy soil of base Armagnac, less interesting in Haute Armagnac and Ténarèze. And we mainly found this grape in base Armagnac. And it's also very interesting because this grape has a very, very, very long potential of maturation. So we like to use the Baco for the very, very old vintages or the very old blends because after 15, 20 years, the rustic character of the Baco is more and more elegant, complex, and it's really a grape very interesting to propose something unique and unique for Armagnac. Today, the Baco represents about 35–40% of the distillation, depending of each year. Another grape that we found a lot in Gascony is called Colombard. This is a grape that we use mainly to make wine to drink. As I said, we are producing also big quantities of wine to drink, white wine. So the Colombard is perfect for this kind of wine. We are able to use this grape variety for distillation, mainly for blending. This is not so useful to find pure Colombard Armagnac, an Armagnac made with pure Colombard. It's mainly blended with Uni Blanc to make young Armagnacs. So, of course, the distillation is very, very different in Armagnac than all the other distillation in the world. And this is one of the reasons why we are producing something different. We just saw that we have a list of different grape varieties, and each grape variety will give significant character to the spirit, but also our distillation emphasize all these differences. To distill in Armagnac, first, of course, we are producing wine. So we usually harvest the grapes in September, middle of September, end of September. The best wines for distillation are always around 10% of alcohol, so not too high in alcohol. We like to keep the acidity in the wine, and we like to keep the freshness in the wine. So we don't harvest too late to be sure that we won't produce too much alcohol in the wine, and we want and to be sure that we will keep the acidity, the natural acidity in the wine. We usually don't harvest in September, and we will ferment the wine during a week, 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the year. By tradition, we use natural yeast. We don't add any selected yeast for the fermentation. And after the fermentation, and transformation of sugar in alcohol, we will let the wine during 2 to 3 weeks to let the heavy lees sediment in the tank, and to only distill the light and elegant lees that we will need for the distillation. So it means that beginning of November, that's when we will start the distillation. Okay. So in the design that you can see on the screen, in fact, what is in yellow color this is the wine. This is the wine non-fermented, and all what is in blue will be the spirit, the vapors distilled. So as you can see, everything is starting in this tank up the system. We pump some wine, a reserve of wine in this tank. From this part of the alembic, we will never use any more pumping. So everything is made with gravity. So on the by the hose outside the column, the tank, the wine is arriving in the first part of the alembic. In this part, this is where we will prepare the wine for distillation, and this is also where we cool the vapors after the distillation. So by gravity, the wine is pushed up in this tank, and at the top of this tank, the wine is in temperature almost ready to be distilled. So the wine is pushed up in this tank, and you can see the long pipe, which is the end of the distillation, plenty of vapors, so very, very, very hot in temperature. And so there is an exchange of energy between the cold wine and the vapors. And this is why at the top of this tank, the wine is almost ready to be distilled. With the connection between the column of distillation and the tank, we will transfer the wine in the column of distillation. As you can see on this column of distillation, there is different plates, different trails, plenty of wine. By gravity, the wine is falling from a trail to another one till the fire, where everything is boiling. So when the wine is boiling, it's producing some vapors, and the vapors are going up the column of distillation. And in each trail, there is a system which obliges the vapors to be in contact with the wine and to take out the wine, all the alcohol and all the flavors. So, of course, the higher you are in the column of distillation, the more there is a concentration of alcohol and and flavors. And the lower you are in the column of distillation, the more you will have some water without any alcohol and flavors. And it's a continuous system where there is some wine arriving and falling in the column of distillation all the time, and there is a production of vapors, plenty of flavors and alcohol, and at the end, at the top of the column, there is another connection which will bring the vapors in the other part where there is the condenser, and as you can see, the cold wine will again make the vapors liquid to finish in the tank.
So just to jump in there, Marc, very quickly, Olivier is doing a very good job with his cursor going up and down the still there. But I've just posted a link into the Zoom and on the Facebook chat. That's just a short video on YouTube that shows how this is all happening. So for anyone watching, save that link so that after tonight you can go back and see on the video, because it's a very good video that sort of follows Olivier's finger as well.
Okay. The most important to keep in mind is that in the column of distillation, there is a physical contact between the vapors distilled and the wine. And during this contact, in each trail, in each plateau, in each plate, that's where and when the spirit take out the wine, all the character of the year, of the grape, of the soil. And we often say that Armagnac is a more authentic and rustic, and this is because of the distillation. In the pot still, you don't have this physical contact. That's really in this column distillation, and only in this column distillation that we have this physical contact where we obtain the rusticity and the strong character of the Armagnac. Okay. So we use a lot of ambulant alembic. So as you can see, that's an ambulant alembic. In this, you can see that the tank that we put on the top of the where we pump the wine is not on the top of the alembic. This is to move it, but this is exactly the same picture that you saw on the slide before. So again, continuous distillation brings a very distinctive character to the Armagnac. The vapors actually pass through the wine and gain in alcohol and aromas along the way. And fresh from the still, the eau de vie has an alcohol content between 53 to 70%. So we can adapt, we can control the concentration of the spirit that we want in the alembic. After that, of course, the spirit is completely white without any color. So we will put the spirit in the cask to start the maturation. There is no Armagnac without any cask. The Armagnac really is the result of the distillation and this period of time where we keep the Armagnac in the cask. By tradition in Armagnac, we use some 400 liters cask. So this is a classic size, a little bigger than the other ones. The casks are usually made with oak trees from the forest of Gascony. So it's a tree. It's an oak tree that we call black oak because they are a little bit more intense in tannins, a little bit more dark in color. So we must pay attention not to keep too much time the Armagnac in new cask, because if you keep the Armagnac in new cask for a long period of time, you will give too much oaky character to the spirit. So that's really a key point in the control of maturation, to control the use of new cask. Of course, during the time, the spirit becomes richer and more refined, And during the time, we also have what we call the angel share. So a part of the volume evaporate, and also we lose some alcohol depending on the humidity and the temperature in the cellar. You can lose more alcohol or more volume during the maturation. So this is a classic. This is our cellars, a part of our cellars. And as you can see, we also like to keep cask for many decades, because of course, as you can see on this picture, a 1962 vintage must stay in a very old cask. We don't want to add more tannins for a very old vintage like that. So it means that we have some very old cask in our cellars that we use for the old Armagnacs. There is different aging categories in Armagnac. The first one, the youngest one, it's a 3-star, or what we call VS. It's minimum a year of aging. Of course, in this case, when you have a bottle of very young Armagnacs like this one, usually it has been added a little bit caramel and sugar to make it a little bit softer and rounder. So this is not the category that personally I like and I produce, but you have to know that as all the categories, all the spirits in the world, we also have a very young Armagnacs in the market. After that, VSOP, very superior old pale. It's minimum 4 years of aging. Napoleon, a category that we found a lot in France in the domestic market, but not so much in Australia or somewhere else. It's minimum 6 years, and XO is minimum 10 years of aging. And of course, we have what has been developed a lot in Armagnac, the vintage Armagnacs. In this case, of course, it's made from one specific year. And this is also very important to know the date of the bottling, because as all the spirits in the world, once the Armagnac is in the glass, it doesn't move anymore. So if you have a 1960 vintage Armagnac bottled in 1970, it's a 10 years old Armagnac, and you can keep your bottle for many years. It will stay a 10 years old Armagnac. So the difference between the date of the bottling and the specific year will really give you the age of the spirit. Okay. You can also find more classic blended Armagnacs, 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, or more. And of course, in this case, we are able to blend different years, but the age on the label will be the age of the youngest Armagnac used in the blend. This is by the law. This is the same for all the spirits produced in Europe, in Scotland for the whiskey, in Ireland, in the classic rums in Martinique or Guadeloupe, and Cognac, Armagnac. When you blend different ages, different years on the label, you must indicate the youngest spirit that you have used in the blend. So you will also find some blended Armagnacs with the indication of the age. That's what we do in my company. So even if we are a niche market, we can say that we sell in more than 100 countries in the world. So Armagnac is a small category, but this is an international category. The domestic market is still the biggest consumer because we have a very good reputation, especially in the restaurant. So the selection of Armagnacs are always very important in the restaurants, especially in the gastronomic restaurants, where this craft image and the artisanal image is working well with the image of this restaurant. For the export markets, USA is number 1, UK number 2. It's changing a little bit because China is more and more demanding. So the the sales of Armagnac in China are increasing a lot. And the young Armagnacs, VS, still represent 56% of the sales. So you can see more than a bottle of two sold in the world is less than a 1 year old Armagnac. Older XO and vintage Armagnac only represent 23% of the export sales. So it means, for example, myself, my company, because we only propose some Armagnac older than 8-10 years old, we only play on 20% of the market, in fact. Any questions? So we are finished with the presentation of the categories. If you have any question, of course,
yes.
Before starting the presentation of my company and our philosophy,
Haynes said, when you mentioned that there's 5,000 hectares and you're only using 2,000 hectares and you can make more, she said, yes, that's a good idea. You should go ahead and do that straight away. So thank you, Juliana, for that one. But a quick question from Emilian here, who was talking about the column still distillation and concentrating the alcohol, and asked the question, how high does the alcohol concentration get? I think you answered that pretty much straight after you answered the question with 53 to 70%. But to evolve on that a little bit, is it up to the still, or does the distiller control how high they want the alcohol content to get, and what effect does that have?
Of course, the still is important. If you have a lot of trails in the column of distillation, it's easier to distill a little bit higher in alcohol, to concentrate a little bit more. Don't forget that in each trail, in each plate, there is a distillation. That's the classic column distillation. If you have 40 plates, you are able to distill to 85-90% of alcohol. Of course, in our artisanal alembic, artisanal stills, we have less than 10 plates in each alembic, but you can control the concentration with the number of plates in your alembic. You can also control with which volume of wine you let arrive in the alembic. Of course, if you control the debit, yes, Olivier, you can maybe show us the design. If you control the debit of the wine that you let arrive in the alembic, with this system, the less volume you let arrive in the alembic rapidly, the more you concentrate. It will take more time to distill, so of course you concentrate more. Okay, and also you can control the intensity of the fire. Okay, and usually when you produce an Armagnac that you imagine to bottle rapidly, young and fresh, you distill a little bit higher in alcohol, and you will dilute with water. When you imagine to keep the Armagnac for 15, 20, 25 years, you distill a little bit lower in alcohol, and also you will be able to bottle the Armagnac after a period of time of aging, cask strength, without any dilution with water. And you keep more character and more diversity of flavors in the spirit.
Thank you. And just this might be a question that leads in well into talking about Darroze as a company. But when we talk about wine and French wine, obviously with no irrigation, because we can irrigate wines in Australia, with no irrigation, when you talk about certain vintages, there's different yields and physically the amount of grapes you get, but there's also quality for different vintages. When we're distilling in Armagnac, are there yields of vintages of different quality, or is it mainly about yield and how many grapes we can get that are useful?
If the question is to really produce diversity, In fact, of course, the grape varieties are very important. The situation of the vineyard in the hills are also the orientation of the vineyard are also very important. The way to distill is very important. The year is very important. But when you have finished to distill, only 50% of the work is made. Maturation is also very, very, very important. So there is many different things which can really affect the quality. It means really change the style, but of course, but also change the character of the spirits. That's a combination of vineyard, distillation, and aging process. So that's the reason why it's difficult to say that a specific year is better than another one. Of course, we can feel some differences after the distillation, but the influence of the maturation is so important. The quality of the oak, the toast of the barrel, how many years you keep the Armagnac in the new oak. There is many different orientations possible during the maturation, which will really change the style of the Armagnac. So it's a combination of different things, and it's difficult to say that one specific year will be better than another one.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think on that note, it's probably a good move to move on to talk about Darroze. Okay. But I find it impossible to talk about Darroze without a little bit in my glass. So I'm going to pour a little bit of the 12-year-old while I let you talk about this, which I welcome anyone else to. Again, we sent out 30 ml samples. Our regular tastings are 15, so certainly don't pour the whole thing out in one go. But I think when we will get onto some vintages which are like very unique. What I love about the Grand Assemblage series from the 8-year-old up to the 50-year-old is that they're creations by the Darroze team from a few different styles and give a really great example of what Armagnac is and what it can taste like at a premium level.
Here it is. Yeah, that's a line of 7 different blends from 8 to 60 years old. Of course, what we are looking for in this line is to be consistent in style. So the 20 years old I propose today is supposed to be very similar in style at what we did in the past and that we will do in the future. So that's the reason why we are blending minimum 10, 12 different Armagnacs in each blend to be able to reproduce almost the same style in the future. So of course, the 8 years old will be completely different than the 30 years old and the 60 years old. And as you can see, even in color, it's changing. And we use a lot this line to introduce this testing and also to educate people on Armagnac. Voilà, that's it. Olivier, we come back? No, come back, yeah. So my family, so first at all, my family is a restaurateur family. My grandfather, Jean, had a very famous restaurant in Gascony, and in fact, he used to go in the countryside to buy some food to use in the restaurant and to cook. So as I said, ducks for the foie gras, chicken, vegetables, and as I explained, by tradition in Gascony, the farmers have different activities, and one of the activity has always been to produce wine and to distill the wine to produce an Armagnac. And the Armagnac has often be used as a little bit a saving account. It means that people like to distill and to put in reserve for the bad days. And the bad days could be to change the roof of the farm, to change the tractor, to marry the daughter, to, all the time, each time that the family needs a cash flow, they use the Armagnac and sell some cask to a negotiant and merchant. And my grandfather, when he visited these farmers to buy some food, had the opportunity to test some small lots of single farm, single vintage Armagnacs. And he had in the 50s, in the 60s, an impressive collection of Armagnacs coming from a specific origin that only sold by the glass. End of the 60s, my father, who was in charge at the restaurant of the wine list and the Armagnac selection, started to sell a few models, but really, that's really end of the 60s. Then my father has created the company that we know today, and has proposed to the same producer not only to buy some bottles for the restaurant, but some complete cask to bottle himself and to sell to other restaurants in France. So the name of my father was Francis, and he selected more and more Armagnacs for the restaurant, and by in cask, he decided to bottle himself and to sell some bottles. The idea was exactly the same idea that they followed during the years and years in the restaurant. The idea was to respect the origin of each Armagnac. So for him, for my father, it was not possible to put the name Darroze on the label and to stop or to blend different origins together. So the idea was really to emphasize the origin of each Armagnac and to show the differences of each cask, each vintage, each Armagnac. So on the label at this time, the only information that you could find was the name of the farm, the vintage, and the date of the bottling. The name of my father just appeared on the back label, selected by Francis Darroze. And of course, at this time, he started to really select some Armagnac already aged. He didn't really control the maturation. It was more a selection of cask coming from different origins and different farms. In 1975, he really started to distill in a domain called Domaine de Martin. Domaine is still a partner of our company today. And the idea was to control it a little bit more the maturation, the process of maturation from the distillation till the bottling. A little bit more than 12, 13 years after the creation of the company, he selected a very, very huge stock of Armagnac coming from a special estate called Domaine de Saint-Aubert. And that's really when the company accelerates a little bit the speed in the terms of selection of spirit and also sales of bottles. Saint-Aubert really represents something special in our company because this is really when the company has completely changed and has been able to really sell more and more Armagnac in the world. This is Francis, my father. He's now 88 years old. He's still alive. Unfortunately, he doesn't work anymore, but it's still there. So from regional, we became international. So after the purchase of Saint-Aubert, as I just said, we built new cellars. The reputation grew, and we opened some new export markets. So in Europe, in the States, in Asia, in Russia, really we started to create an international brand in the niche category called Armagnac. Myself, I came back home in 1985, 1986. I made some studies to make wine. So before coming back home, I was a kind of flying winemaker because I went to USA, Hungary, Bordeaux during several years to make wine. And I joined my father because it was the good time for me to come back home. We intensified the distillation. I increased the number of partners and also open new markets, and try to keep what my father has created in terms of philosophy, and emphasize the quality, the diversity, and imagine that we could be able to create a kind of small but international premium brand in Armagnac. Our mission, our long-term mission is be leader in the not in terms of volume sold in Armagnac, but leader in quality. All what we are doing in the company, all the partners that we have at the production, all the people that we are choosing to distribute our spirit in the world, must share this idea that Darroze must be a leader in quality in the Armagnac market. And for that, we follow different strong values. The first one is authenticity. So when I speak about authenticity, it means that we never had any sugar to accelerate the process to make the spirit sweeter. We never had any tannins or caramel to accelerate the aging process. This authenticity is also the result of the classic alembic distillation, the classic, the continuous Armagnac distillation. So we only use this kind of distillation because this is also a way for us to keep the authenticity. And of course, in the authenticity, we have this traceability. You will see after that that when I will present the unique collection that we have arranged, exactly the same philosophy that what my father imagined when we started 60 years ago. It's a range of Armagnac coming from single farms when we respect the origin of each product. We never blend an Armagnac with another one, and we want to keep this authenticity. Second value, the respect of the producer. So we have about 30 food producers that we deal with. Some of them we have been working together for now 50 years. And that's very, very important to have this kind of partnership with the producer, because without the producer, we are nothing. And the producer also have strong partners with us, because that's for them the only way to found a real exit for their production. Respect of the product, again, no caramel, no syrup, nothing to change the natural character of the spirit. Respect of our distributor. We like to keep the same people involved in the distribution for a long time. This is a strong loyalty, and this is also the best way to be consistent in our distribution. And also very respectful with our people, employees, partners. We are a small family company, and so all the employees know each other, more than know each other, more the family of each other, and this is our way to work, to have this kind of respect and ready to help people when they need help. Number three, the third strong value for us is independent. We are an independent and family company. This is very, very important for us, because this is the best way to be free. For example, I don't want to produce any 3 or 4 years old Armagnac, and I do not have any people to push me to produce a 3 or 4 years old Armagnac. I believe that it's difficult to propose something without any sugar, without any additive, younger than 8, 10 years old. So my choice is to propose 8 years old in the Grand Assemblage, and not to propose a 5 years old. Then this freedom is very, very important for me. And that's the reason why I always explain that we are independent and we want to keep independence, even in sometimes it's difficult to financially to invest for the future because we have 20 years of stock in our cellars, 20 years of sales in stock in our cellars. So sometimes it's a little bit heavy, financially heavy, but stay independent is very important for us. And of course, value number 4 is pleasure. I cannot imagine to work without any pleasure. I cannot imagine to propose an Armagnac. The goal is really to put some pleasure in the glass and to see some smile in the face of our clients. And that's the key point, the key word. Take pleasure when we work and also give pleasure to our clients. So these 4 values are always very, very important in our company, and it helps us to make the decision and to be sure to stay in this right way and in this way. The main goal will be to really propose the top quality product and top quality brandies in the future and in the markets. So as you can see, this is the unique collection, what we call the unique collection. So this is the historical range. So you will have 4 different Armagnacs from this line. This is the singularity of our company. As I explained, this is also the history of the company. And this is the image of the company. This line really makes our philosophy completely different from the other ones. Olivier, if you can come back to the last slide, please. Yeah, exactly, this one. So you can see on each label, so you find the name of the brand, so our name, but also on each label, you will see the name of the farm. So, for example, in this one, Domaine de Jolin, Domaine Château de Gaube. So each Armagnac is coming from a single farm, a single terroir. Okay. Also, you will see the origin of the product, Base Armagnac, or Ténèbres. Okay. You will mainly found some Base Armagnac because we believe that this is where we are able to produce the spirit with a long potential of maturation. But in for example, the 1973, it will be a Ténèbres, a pure Ténèbres that you will have with you to test. Excuse me. Another very important information, this is the vintage. So as you can see, 2002, 89, 83, 79. So this is the year of the production. And also on the main label, you will find the date of the bottling. This is always some fresh bottling because we only bottle when we receive the order from our partner. And in Australia, this is Serbaco. And Serbaco, our importers, when they send us an order, we specially bottle for them. And you will also find on the main label how many years the Armagnac stay in the cask. This is the difference between the date of the bottling and the vintage. For the very, very old vintages like 1943 in this picture, sometimes we must stop the maturation in the cask. After 55, 60 years in the cask, usually we pay attention on this Armagnac because we don't want to lose too much alcohol. We want to keep the freshness in the spirit. So we sometimes transfer the Armagnac in the glass in big damajan, big bottles of 30 to 50 liters of volume. Okay. And in this case, of course, on the label, we indicate the date when we have transferred the Armagnac in this big damajan. Okay. Also, in this label, you don't see in this picture, but on there is a little leaflet on the bottle, and on this little leaflet, little book, you will find more detailed information the name of the farm, the name of the farmer, the alcohol contained after the distillation, the grape varieties, the kind of oak that we have used, plenty of information for the geek, for the people who want a lot of detailed information. You will find this on this leaflet, and that's very important for us to share all this information with you because really it can explain the difference between an Armagnac and another one.
And Marc, just to jump in there quickly, that neck tag is one of my things that makes Darroze so favorite for me. And so today, for all the Armagnacs that I sent out, the bottles are too small to put all the information on from the neck tags. Exactly. But I'll share the links because I actually wrote them all on the website. So exactly what's on the neck tag and the bottling dates and all that sort of thing, and the soil types and the hectares and the name of the person who distilled it, they're all on the links that I'll share now on the chats.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Scott.
So, I am a nerd, so it had to be there somewhere.
Okay. So after the unique collection, we also have the other line that you are testing right now. You are testing the 12 years old. So I just started to explain if we are looking for diversity in the unique collection, each Armagnac will come from a single lot and a single cask. In line, we are looking for something more consistent in style. We are more in the classic philosophy of spirit industry, where there is something very consistent to follow year after year. This is a different approach. This is also a different way to work in the salon. Honestly, I found more difficult to make 8 years old consistent than really to select a cask and another one. We accept that in the unique collection, each cask will be different and there is no perfect Armagnac. That's something very important in the approach of our job. We accept that the idea or the diversity of the selection will propose something different in style. And maybe my favorite won't be yours, and that's exactly what we want. We want to show the diversity. In this philosophy of the Grand Assemblage, of the great blends, it's a little bit different. The goal, the objective is really to propose almost the same style year after year and blends after blends. So it's, of course, very complementary to the unique collection. It's more accessible in profile, but this is always a challenge to be able to respect this style. So, for example, one of the technique I use to be consistent in style is on each blend, I always add before the bottling 1/3 of the blend before, or the previous blend. So at least there is a 30% to 35% in the blend coming from the previous blend. So there is a base that we will really permit to keep the same character and the same style. That's my technique. And to give you an idea, in volume, blends and unique collection are 50-50. So it's they are both very important in the sales in the company, and they are complement each other. In fact, they are different profile and they are complement each other.
Yes, couple of comments coming in on the Facebook stream there, and the Zoom that you touched on there, that it must be difficult to keep that consistency, but you explain almost like a Solera sometimes by using a little bit of the old or the previous batch stocks to come through. I think there's a few people that have skipped ahead a little bit and had a little bit of sample, because there's some people saying they're smiling and having a good time all up. So that's always a good sign. And there was a couple of comments before that I tried to answer on the chat about particularly full bottles of Armagnac. These are, predominantly all Armagnacs under cork. So if you've got a bottle at home, you just put the cork back in, but leave standing up. Don't leave it on its side like wine. You don't want the spirit touching the cork. But yeah, that'll go for as. I mean, they don't last too long at my house, but they'll last as long as your self-control will last to stop drinking it all when it goes on. But
and Scott, also one advice, for example, when you have half empty or full bottle of spirit, not to have too much contact with air. You can also put inside the bottle some glass marbles, so it will push up the level of spirit in the bottle, and you have less air in the bottle, so it will protect a little bit more from oxidation.
That's a good trick. I hadn't thought about it. I normally pour them into smaller bottles, but that's a very good trick. I hadn't thought of that before. So I've just posted the details for all four of the vintages we've got. So I don't know if it's the exact same batch that you've got there, Marc, but the 2004, the Rieston, for example, that's was bottled September 2019. So it's a 15-year-old is the version we've got. Mm-hmm. From Bass Armagnac, sandy soils, distilled to 53% alcohol, obviously local oak. And when I stuck my nose in the soil, I didn't have to stick my nose in it, to be quite honest. And one of the things I love about Darroze is the ABV. We're up at 49.4, I believe, on this one. And it just jumped down, and it gave me everything that I love in Armagnac, particularly at that youthful age, that fruit, that elegance, but was still quite muscular, still quite powerful, which I've seen in a lot of the 2000, 2005 era sort of vintages.
So what is very interesting in this Armagnac, Scott, is it's a pure Baco grape. So Baco, as I explained, is a local grape, very interesting for the very old Armagnacs. And in this case, of course, this is not young, but this is not as old as what we have after. And keep in mind this Armagnac, 15 years old, made with Baco, because you can compare at the end of the testing with the 66, which is also pure Baco. When the Baco is young, you're right, this is this character that you just explained, powerful, but also very fruity, quite intense in alcohol. It's an Armagnac hot, not aggressive, but intense. Of course, that's what we like in Armagnac. And with this base, we can say that this Armagnac has a potential of maturation for decades. We can imagine to keep this Armagnac in the cask during 30, 40 more years, because it's so complex, so intense, so full in body that there is really a base to keep to age for a long period of time.
This particular domain, and I'm probably going to murder a few of these pronunciations because I don't even speak English, I only speak Australian, let alone French. But Domaine de Rieston, I've seen a few vintages of that come through here. Is that a favoured domain for you guys? Have you got a few casks of them over the while?
Alors, as I explained, when my father started a long time ago, he just selected some casks already mature and already aged in the cellar. These last 25 years, my job has been to create a team of 15 partners where we distill every year. So also because I was not a chef, but I was more wine oriented, I had this capacity to go in the countryside and to go in the vineyard to speak with the farmers and to choose to adapt a little bit our production. So I have really developed partnerships with farmers that we follow every year. So that's a way for us to control, of course, the maturation, the distillation, but also to be in control in the vineyards. And Rieston is one of my oldest partner. Okay, and this is very close to my to where I'm living and where we have the cellars. And it's interesting because my father used to work with the current farmer's father, and now I am working with my generation. So our families follow each other, and so that's a long story between Rieston and Darroze, and this character of the Baco is also what we like, and that's the reason why we have a strong partnership with them.
Yeah, it's excellent. I think while this we consider it quite a young Armagnac, I think it's quite important to remember, as you pointed out, that 15 years is still quite old. If we were talking about a rum or a whiskey that was 15 old, that's pretty old. If it was an Australian brandy or a whiskey or a rum or an Australian anything, it's exceptionally old. So I think we need to step back and, while we're drinking all of these, go, oh, that's even though it's young for an Armagnac and young for a Darroze Armagnac, at least it's still a very, very old spirit.
You're right.
I wasn't drinking much 15 years ago.
And we can feel some flavors coming from the maturation. We can really feel some small rancio flavors arriving. The rancio flavors is what we call, the old walnuts, this kind of flavors, and also some flavors like honey, the honey or the wax that we use for the furnitures, and this is typical for this grape after 15-20 years of maturation.
Yeah, I think it's very smart. And as I've said, and maybe it's because they're exceptional value for money, and my bank account likes me when I buy the younger ones. But I've really enjoyed a lot of vintages in the last couple of years, from that sort of 2000 to 2005 from Darroze. There's been some absolute crackers there, and yeah, this is right up there as well. All right. Are we going to go in order to the 81 next?
Now the 81, of course, it's coming from another farm, but more than that, it's a completely different style, because this Armagnac has been made with two other grapes, Colombar and Uni Blanc. As I told you, Colombar is not so used to distill. And Uni Blanc, this is the perfect grape for distillation. And this 81, so I don't know when it has been bottled for you, maybe also last year, 2019, is still, of course, in the cask, in a very old cask. And it's very distinctive when we compare with the Baco 2004 Rieston. So it will be interesting to compare.
And just for those, again, just on the link there, you can see all the details that are on the neck tag, and we've jumped up pretty considerably, pretty quickly. This is the vintage we have in Australia at the moment, was bottled in March last year, 2019. So we're talking about a 38-year-old at this point, which is a remarkably old spirit, and something that, from my point of view as well, is incredible value. If just comparing on the oak barrel shelves here in Sydney, if you want an old vintage spirit, Armagnac for the past 10 years has been the absolute value proposition, because like 38 years old, that is a long time ago. And if there's anyone on the chat that is a 1981 baby, stick your hand up and take a bit of a time to sit back and enjoy this one, because it's not often anymore you get to drink a birth year vintage of anything.
And what is interesting with these Armagnacs is it's always changing in the glass. You can keep your glass for the next 2 hours, and you will see that the Armagnac will change. So you will have less and less light flavors, more and more flavors coming from the maturation. So honey, walnut, gingerbread, all these kind of heavy flavors coming from the maturation, and you will lose the fruity character coming from the light flavor. Yeah, it's, you can see if you would like to compare with the Baco, we could say that the Baco was more rustic, a little bit more with a lot of energy, and this one is maybe more fine in style, a little bit more elegant in style due to the grape and also due to the age, because it's much older. So of course the age is also a part of the explanation.
A quick comment here that I think it's Juliana there's got some foie gras. I probably butchered that pronouncement, from Perignon, which is going wonderful with the Armagnacs. And that's a good point. I know that some of you people watching on have some very good setups at home. So please send any pictures to the Oak Barrel Facebook. I'd love to see what your setup's like. But one quick question on Lahitte, on Château Lahitte here. On the first one, the farmer and the distiller were the same. The distiller here is Michalowski. Is that a distillation house, or is that like a mobile still, or who's that?
Yes, exactly. As you in the presentation, we show you a picture of mobile still, and that there was a tradition, and there is still a tradition today, even if more and more people have their own alembic now and their own still. But at this time in the 80s, in the 90s, we use a lot of mobile still flying from an estate to another one. You have to imagine that all these farmers only distill few casks a year. For example, Rieston, this is 16 casks every year. Okay, Lahitte, it must be between 10 to 12, depending on each year. So it's always very, very small. All these farms have small productions. So for them, it's easier to call a mobile still to come and to distill during 2, 3, 4 days. Don't forget that's a continuous system, a continuous distillation. So we always distill night and days. So we distill rapidly, one distillation night and days. So it's quite fast. And so we use a lot of mobile still traveling from an estate to another one.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and if anyone is fascinated by this, obviously there's the video I posted a little bit earlier about that shows the distillation process, but there's a lot of great imagery out there on the internet and on the official Armagnac.fr site, which shows a lot of imagery about this. Marco Grezza, who is an Oak Barrel regular, and we look forward to having you back on site here, is having his with truffled cheese tonight, which is also an excellent accompaniment, and I can sort of attest to that cheese goes very well with Armagnac. This one as well, just the nose, the 81, the nose is so pretty. I could wear this as perfume. I don't normally wear perfume, but I would wear this as perfume. Just a beautiful floral notes, very, it just wants to suck you in. It's almost, and it's one that I think, that I would, I'm going to keep open tonight, and I'm going to keep nosing. I'll go back to that one. So I'm actually going to put that one aside for a little bit.
If you have 4 or 5 glasses, use them, because you will see that even in an hour, you will have pleasure to test again and to see the evolution.
That's what's great about virtual tastings. We're not going to kick you out and turn off the lights. You're all at home, so you can stay up for as long as you want and leave them out for as long as you want. 1973. Now, this one's an interesting one because it is a Darroze, and it's also from a producer that you've had a bit of success with a 1980 vintage, I think it was.
Yeah,
which I love.
It's also a very, very, very interesting estate. Not because it's one of my oldest partner, but because in fact it's not really in Bas Armagnac. As I explained the story of my family, the restaurant of my grandfather was really in Bas Armagnac. So my grandfather and my father already knew very, very well the territory of Bas Armagnac, and less the territory of Darroze. And myself, I really found some different Armagnacs in Darroze, but also some very, very interesting, a little bit drier in style, sometimes a little bit more intense and rushy, but really some very, very different style. And La Poste was one of them. And we have different vintages from La Poste. And 1980, 3 or 4 years ago, has been awarded the best spirit in the world by Paul Pacult, which is who is a US journalist. He has a review called The Spirit Journal, and he is known as a good, very, very knowledgeable journalist in spirit in the US, in New York. And every year he used to test spirits from all around the world. From grains, from vines, from wine, from canes, from everything, and we had the chance 4 or 5 years ago to be this Armagnac 1980 has been elected the best spirit that he has tested in the previous 12 months. So of course it was very honorific for us. And that was also very interesting to see that with the Ténarèse, we sometimes that we didn't imagine as the best Armagnac for us. We had this gift coming from Paul Pacult.
Yeah, I haven't tried as many Ténarèse as you would have. Obviously, I've tried a lot more Basse Armagnac, but the ones I've tried, particularly the Darroze ones that are probably a little bit more natural example, they tend to be a little bit sweeter on my palate. Is that typical of Ténarèse?
First of all, this is 1973, so more than 45 years in the cask makes the spirit, of course, a little bit sweet
okay.
due to the oxidation and also the age, of course. It has been distilled a little bit higher in alcohol than usual. For us, it has been distilled about 62, 63. This is the reason why even after 57 or 56 years of maturation in the cask, this is still very high in alcohol, 48. And maybe that's also the reason why you feel this sweet character. It's also due to the alcohol.
Yeah, lots of like really deep caramelized honey on the nose, quite rich. And on the end, I don't know if you're familiar with these, but those little cola lollies, we get them in Australia, very classic Australian confectionery item that's got like the cola flavor in them. Just on the end palate, I get that little hit at the end, which was quite surprising, but very enjoyable. But I'm not sure if you're going to be familiar with that particular lolly.
Tannins are a little bit drier. At the end, on the tongue, it's a little bit drier. That's a different style. And again, what is interesting in these 4 Armagnacs coming from the unique collection is they will all be different, and they all have something to explain, something to say, something to propose. And that's really what we like in our philosophy, in our system of work is, again, if you really want to found a perfect spirit, a perfect Armagnac, none of them are perfect. But sometimes perfection is boring. So each one has its own character. Each one has its own expression. And this is why it's so complex and interesting.
Yeah, and quick shout out to Thomas, who says there a little bit of milk bottle in there as well, which is another very classic Australian lollies from the 80s. And a big thank you to Olivier, who's about to jump out. I think he's planning to go back to France and go to Armagnac next year. So I think you might be getting a phone call from someone asking for some advice on where to tour. But thank you for joining us tonight, mate, which is probably a good point. And I'm going to probably say that a lot of people have already poured this out and looking to it already. But something that is very, very special at any time, but particularly drinking it with, with someone like yourself. But the 1966, which bottled in June last year, is a 53-year-old. So anyone who was born in 1966, enjoy this one. Take a bit of time on it. And again, you don't need to rush through these. You keep some in your glass for later. There's no need to rush on these.
And 66 again is a different estate than the 2004, but this is the same grape, Château de Gaube, but 66 Baco. To give you an idea, these Armagnacs are still in the cask in my cellar.
Yeah, right. So it's if we like these, and I was talking to Mauro just before from Tobacco, before we started this tasting. There's not a lot of this 66 in the country. There's only a handful of bottles. But say if we wanted more, is that just a case of you going down to the cellar and bottling more for them? Is that how it works? Just on demand?
Yeah, if you want to order a bottle in September, it will be bottled especially for you. We do not have any stock of bottles ready, and this vintage is still in the cask. So it's a very old cask, of course. It's not a cask where we imagine to continue to bring some oaky character, but it's still moving a little bit because there is a natural oxidation in the cask, and also because all these casks are not completely full. So of course, if there is an oxidation emphasized a little bit and accelerated by the fact that it's not full at all.
And just while people are getting their heads around this one, there's a quick question from Lynn there that says, do you decant your Armagnac bottles or do you keep it in the original bottles? Personally, talking about, oxygen, I like to keep it in the original bottles. I also find the original bottles quite beautiful. They've got all the information on them. So I keep my bottles in my Armagnacs in the original bottles. But I mean, Marc, have you got any opinions on decanting bottles like this, full bottles?
Alors, if you want to decant the Armagnac because you want to open the bouquet, or honestly, this is not necessary. It will arrive in the glass. If you want to keep your Armagnac and to store in a small bottle because you don't want to have too much exchange between the air and the spirit, it can be a good idea. Not as a wine to open the bouquet and to open the wine, but more to store and to keep for the next few months.
Yeah. So do we know this particular Château, and there's 3 domains and 1 Château in this lineup. Are they still operating? Are they still around?
Yes. This one, for example, Château de Gaube. They have distilled big quantities in the 60s. After that, they have started to really buy the wine and not distill so much. But now, for the last 10 years, they are distilling again. But that's also due to the fact that we have started a partnership with them. And also we propose really a good deal for the future. That's also the reason why we like to build some long-term partnership with our producer to be sure that we will be able to follow the next production and the next vintages.
Yeah, excellent. There's on the nose there is so much going on that I think it's going to take me another 2 hours to really understand that one. I am a little bit mindful of the time here because for us over here, it's the end of the night. We can keep drinking all night. We're easy, but you guys are just starting your work day. So if there's any final questions, get them in quickly. But a couple of notes I wanted to say. I've been a big fan of Armagnac and drinking a lot of Armagnac. I love that you can drill down into vintages in Armagnac like you can't do in Cognac. It's much harder to do that in Cognac, so you get blends. I love the uniqueness. And with all due respect to Castered and La Courtoisie and Taraquet, like some of my favorites, Darroze for me is my absolute favorite Armagnac producer. It's the one, if you're going to understand Armagnac properly, it's the purest form. And it's just been so great to listen to you talk, Marc and Olivier. And I think as well, it's, as I sort of said at the very start, we can talk to Australian winemakers and Australian spirits producers, but to hear you talk, and you've not only been a producer and a selector, but also involved with the, organization of Armagnac and run, being the boss of that Armagnac right at the top in shaping the Armagnac that we drink, right now all around the world. It's just fascinating to hear the way you speak about Armagnac and the way you want to tell the story. It's been excellent. And a lot of people sort of coming through, a lot of mercies in the chat there on Facebook and on YouTube. Are there any vintages from 1954 available? Comes one question from Paul.
1954. No, unfortunately, this is sold out.
Ah.
It was too good.
You're a bit late, Paul. That's all right. But look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Maybe you can sign a little bit of paper and send it on via email, and I'll stick it to the board to say that you came back technically in 2020 as well. But we'd love to have you back again, and thank you to 1982 and 1986, says Simon McGoran. I think I've seen some 86 and 82s.
And
I've actually got Simon, I've got an 86 already here.
86,
from
yes.
La Marquette. So that one's already here.
Mm-hmm.
That's very good. I've tried that one. Because they do an excellent 89, which is a very, very special vintage, obviously, for reasons we won't go into.
My partner in Australia, Sabaco, our importer, has a huge selection of different vintages. So you can ask Scott, and Scott can ask Mauro from Sabaco, and I'm sure you will find a solution for a special vintage.
Yeah, I have it here in my emails from today. So anyone wants to come and ask me, I can give you exact price on what it'll cost. But I guarantee it'll be cheaper than buying a whiskey at that price for that vintage, 100%. But look, yeah, guys, again, thank you so much. We said we'd go for about an hour and maybe an hour and 20 minutes, and we've gone for an hour and 40 minutes. So thank you. Yeah, and your passion for us to be able to get involved in this and see you in your natural habitat in Gascony, and I'm sure you're going to get a few people that will be hitting you up in the next couple of years when we're allowed to travel again to come and say good day and come visit you.
Scott, it has been a pleasure for us also. Thank you for the invitation. And yes, I hope to see you in person maybe next year.
Yeah, well, you know where to find me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
If anyone wants to say in the Zoom chat and have any more comments about the Armagnacs, I'm not going anywhere. So feel free to have a chat, but we will probably wrap up the live streams there. So I'll just